reckon we can get started. Riley, if you don't mind introducing yourself to our audience, kind of what you've done in the past and what you're working on now.
Sure. Yeah. Hey, y'all. I'm Riley Testut. I'm the developer of Delta, the video game emulator on iPhones, and also the creator of AltStore, which is a whole separate thing that I created to distribute Delta before Apple allowed it in the App Store.
So many questions arise from just saying...
I know. And it's like, if I even mention AltStore a bit, I'm like, it's just a separate thing.
People who have logged on to this and just thinking like, oh, I'll just check out this episode, they were just like holding Delta in their hands now.
I know.
They'll be absolutely like, wow, this is awesome. Thank you for coming on, man. Obviously, Brandon and I use Delta on a regular basis, and we're very happy to have you here. I was doing a bit of reading about you this morning, as I do. That might come across as, last-minute prep, but it definitely wasn't. But I've been checking out some of the stuff you've been working on when you were, first getting started and stuff. Tell me a bit about Shoot Around, getting going with that, and how
the real beginning, yeah.
Yeah, listen, I want to go full beginning. This is like your origin story, this podcast.
Gotcha. Excellent. So that was like when I first I got my iPhone as a teenager. It was like the iPhone 3G, and I fell in love with that thing. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. So I was like, I could make an app for this, because I was downloading all these other apps. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I want to try it out. I had no program experience whatsoever, at all. But so I was like, oh, let's see what I can do. And so then I bought some books to teach you programming, and then I learned basics. But I was like, I just need an app idea. And then I was listening to a podcast one day, and then they randomly mentioned, wouldn't it be cool to use your iPhone camera to look around, just shoot things virtually with lasers? I was like, app idea. Nailed it. I need that. And then I just turned that into a thing. But my favorite part is I had no graphic design experience. I still don't. But so everything, all the graphics in that app were made with Microsoft Paint. I had an A button that was a red circle with an A on it. I had a blue circle. The lasers were red and yellow diagonal pixel things, all in Paint. All the app icon made in Paint.
At what year did you make this one?
It's 2009. Yeah,
long time ago.
Yeah, early on. And so it's very basic.
What was your first dabble into emulating then? Did you just talk to me about your emulation history? Because this is what a wide number of our audience are probably most interested in. When did you first get interested in emulation?
So I've always been interested in emulation. I've used emulators throughout my childhood, honestly. Ever since I think I first discovered that it was a thing when I was 10 years old. I found that you could download emulation on the computer, or you could on your computer. I thought it was awesome, but I didn't dabble in doing it myself for a while, because it was kind of just by happenstance. I was working on another app at the time, another camera app. And then I came across just some open source code for a jailbreak emulator called GPSP, or GPS phone, for that people could use to jailbreak their iPhones and run Game Boy games. And so I just came across this code online. I was like, wait, hold on. This is a whole functioning app for jailbroken phones, but maybe I could tweak it and put it onto my own phone, and change it around.
It was open source, was it?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, nice.
And so I was like, oh, cool. So I downloaded it. It didn't compile at all. It had so many errors, and so I was really determined though. So I just tinkered away on it and got that basically to a really hacky version that could run Pokemon Emerald. That's the reason I did it. I was I just want to play Pokemon Emerald again on my phone, and so that was my determination. And so then I installed it on my phone. It worked. I put up my friends' phones at my high school, and we're all this is pretty cool. We're all just playing Pokemon and everything, and that was really what it was for a while. It was just me and my friends using it.
You must be so popular, man. If you were the guy to go to get there's a guy who can get Pokemon on your phone. But yeah. Come on,
I was lucky that my high bathroom. Yeah. they did approve. They liked it. We had a nerdy high school. The band kids were cool. The film nerds were cool. It was cool to be a nerd. So it did work out.
And what year was this? Just to get some brief timelines.
This is now 2013. 2013 is when I first got interested in all this.
So what phone were you using for the emulator on?
By now, I think the iPhone the iPhone 5, I think.
Nice.
iPhone, yeah. The screen had just gotten bigger, and I was like,
To be fair, the jailbreaking scene around that time was massive. I remember getting suckered into it, and it screwed up my phone.
It was just a really fun time for innovation and everything, just to try new things. And exactly,
not for Brandon. Not for Brandon. He was like, "Oh, my phone don't work anymore. Mom's gonna kill me."
It wasn't jailbreak. It was proper break. It was just break the phone.
It. Oh, that's fun. You can just do that. Mess around.
Yeah. Some guy in the bathroom told me I could play Pokemon Emerald on this thing.
That's funny you said that. My business partner, like Shane, who I do everything with, he literally like would jailbreak people's phones in high school for them, because that was like what he would do. He was like, because people would just come to him and be like, "Hey, I need my phone jailbroken." It's like, "I got you," and he would just like plug their phone into his laptop and like get it. So definitely a demand for that kind of thing.
Yeah. Some of my friends had theirs jailbroken. They had all the really cool like apps. They had clocks and stuff and weird animations on the home screen. I was just like, shit, sign me up.
There was always one kid who knew how to do all this stuff.
Exactly.
And then and then all of a sudden they'd be like, I'd be like, "Oh, I'm going to get mine done," and then there'd be like a massive notice coming down, and you never see the kid had moved classes suddenly, and like I'd be like, "Oh, I've missed the boat again," like every single time.
Yeah, you got to get in there where I can.
I know, man. Well, I guess a lot of our readers will also know you from your work on GBA for iOS.
Yes, that's what that app ended up being. So I called it GBA for iOS, just like internally to my friends, and that's what it was. But then what made GBA for iOS take off more was I found a way basically to distribute it outside the App Store, because I found a service where you could hook it up to what's called an enterprise certificate. Trying not to be too technical, but it meant that anyone could basically go to a website and then just install GBA for iOS from this website. And it was that easy. And I was like, okay, I'll set it up. I'll see if there's any demand for this thing. And then it turned out there was a lot of demand for that kind of thing. And so so it was still like at that point a very hacked together project, and I put up on GitHub, and then people started talking about it. There were like Reddit posts, people were making YouTube videos on like installation tutorials, and I was like, oh, okay, there's like a demand for this kind of thing. Maybe I should take it seriously, because like I really didn't think they'd be that big a deal, but then people were like really enjoying it, so I was like, okay, screw like all my camera apps that I'm building. Maybe I should just like pivot and really focus on this kind of thing. And whatever, see what comes from it. Because there was the weird way to install, like if you set your date back by a day, you could install the app from websites. So a lot of weird stuff just happened to exist. I was like, why not? So then I worked on the second version of GBA for iOS, GBA for iOS 2.0, with my friend Paul Thorson from high school. Like we worked on it together. He did all the design. And that's what people really know of what GBA for iOS is. That's what we like really released like a polished thing with the website, and we told people download from our website, set the date back 24 hours, and that's like really when that happened, and that was pretty exciting. That also did very well. Like, what was
it like discovering that there was this? I mean, like, you put it up there, you wake up one day, there's like 2 YouTube videos, then like a week later there's 200.
Yeah.
What did that feel like from something that you just start? Because the way you're talking about it, it's like it doesn't seem like there was much struggle. It was like something fun you were just working on. You were like, I'll put this up, see what happens.
Yeah.
Like it kind of sounded like it came quite easy, and then bang, absolutely massive. Like that must have been immense for you, right?
It was very surreal, very like it was amazing. It was really cool. I was like seeing some people talk about like playing games, but yeah, it was definitely a new scale. Like I was not used to seeing just like articles come out. Like Time magazine posted about GBA for iOS at one point, and I was like,
that's wild.
And I was like, wow, like it's like, and again, like I was realizing this is a really big deal. Like again, even bigger than I thought it would be when I was like devoting time to it. And that's really like, so it was really GBA for iOS 2.0 when that came out, and the reception was like huge. Like we got millions and millions of downloads, not in the App Store, just like the people wanting to play this. And I was like, you know what? I think there really is like a strong market here for like, not just even like emulators, like this is just one app. Like there's so many types of apps that aren't allowed in the App Store. I feel like people are really missing out here. Like clearly there's a strong demand, and it's not jailbreaking. People don't want to jailbreak necessarily. They just want to install different apps. And that was like my key, because I was like, I did jailbreak back in the day, but I never stuck around with it. It wasn't fun enough for me to put up with it. So I was like, I don't want to jailbreak. I just want to have cool new apps like emulators. So that's really the beginning then of all that motivation to do something with that.
What did you work on after that? Because I guess it's been a long time since then and now, and the emulation industry on mobile has changed drastically as well.
Yeah, but I pretty much went right into Delta right after GBA. Like there was maybe a few months off because I graduated high school the same year like I released GBA, and so then I went into college, and so I was a little busy with college, like freshman year of college at first. But by the end of my freshman year of college, I'd started just working on Delta. I was like, I want a new project. I want to do something new. But I didn't actually realize Delta would be anything at the time. I made it because Swift had just been announced, like Apple's programming language, and I was like, I want a cool little project for me to learn Swift in. So I'll just build another app for myself that I can just like play around with and just learn from that. And that's what Delta was at first. And then I was just working on that for a bit over like college, and then it was like I worked on it for like a year, and I was like, yeah, maybe I could turn this into something. Maybe I could do something with this. And that's when I was like, but again, I didn't want to like have to deal with a lot of like bullshit with Apple. I was like, I don't want to like I just wanted to get it in the App Store. And so like after a year of working on Delta, this is like 2015, I went to WWDC and I talked to App Review, and I was like, is there any way I can get Delta in the App Store at all? And then they were like, you know what? I think so. If you can like work with us and like basically give us like an allow list of games you want to allow every update, we can just make sure those games are safe for the App Store, and then you can have it in there. They were just like concerned about installing any potential game because they just didn't want there to be like whatever. But it's like, okay, fine, whatever. Like I'll submit Delta to the App Store and then just have an allow list of games. And so that's what I plan to do. And then I worked on that for like a year, and I went back to them the next year, and that's when they said, nope, never mind. You're not allowed to put anything in the App Store whatsoever. It's like, we do not allow emulators, period. And that was just
what was their reasoning behind that? Because it's typically used illegally and unethically.
They never gave me a direct reason. That is the reason. Like that is 100. It wasn't advantageous for them to allow it, because it would just threaten their relationship with like Nintendo and other gaming companies for no benefit, as in because there's no money. Like emulators do not make Apple money, so it's like no need for them to see the reason to allow it. So that's kind of what I ended with for a bit, and I was like, well, this is stupid. I've now spent so much work on Delta, and Apple's now saying it can't be allowed, and so I was determined to find some way to get out there eventually.
And then how did you go about getting users to install it the same way as GBA for OS?
So I didn't want to do like the same thing as GBA for iOS because also Apple had just like shut down some of the things we were relying on. So I wanted to build something reliable, like something that you could use that Apple wouldn't be able to shut down. That was like my goal. And that's kind of how I ended up working on AltStore, which, to put it real simply, is like just a way. It's like a tool, a program that like tricks your phone into thinking you are a developer, you're an Apple developer, and then you're just installing your own apps onto your phone for free, because Apple allows students to do this, like in college. And so I knew this, like I knew Apple allowed this, so I was like, oh, I can just make a tool that does this for you, and that would be the new way of installing Delta. And basically that, if that makes sense.
So did you get any kind of pushback from doing it that way then, or was that kind of just like, we're going to leave this guy to do what he's doing and anything?
Pushback from Apple?
Yeah.
No, they've never reached out to me, or at least before this year, about anything to do with AltStore officially. They would throw wrenches into what I was working on. Like they would shut down something I was relying on, so I'd have to like quickly work around that to fix it in AltStore, but never an official communication. And I think it helped that this is about the time that people countries around the world were investigating Apple. And so I was kind of like, I hope that I'm kind of just safe, because it'd look really bad for Apple to come after AltStore when they're being investigated by everyone in the world right now. So I was kind of like riding that line.
Yeah. What do you think's changed in Apple's eyes now that has allowed them to kind of just welcome emulation?
It is entirely because we were about to launch AltStore in the EU with Delta as our main app. Like that was the reason. We had been working with them for months to launch AltStore PAL as the variant in Europe, and Delta was going to be our premier app, and it still was. But without getting into too many details, we had to work with Apple back and forth a lot. They knew exactly what we were doing. We told them what our plans were. And then, like the weekend before we launched AltStore PAL, they have to approve all the apps that go through AltStore still. Stupid reason. So for 2 months, been waiting for them to approve Delta so that we could distribute it in our own store. So we're like, Apple, can you please approve Delta for our store, not for the App Store? And then the weekend before we were going to launch, they changed the App Store rules to allow emulators, and then approved our app, approved Delta for AltStore, and we were like,
so how big is the Apple's team looking at the emulation niche? Is it just one guy going, yeah, on his to-do list, tick, that's fine? Or is it generally like 5 or 6 people looking at it and looking at all the legal issues that it may impair?
This would have been a very big decision from the top. Like, this kind of thing. Like, this was an executive top-level decision to allow emulators in the App Store and it very much just, Apple's beholden to PR and how they perceived. And it was gonna be too bad for them to have a brand new App Store launch with such a successful app that's not allowed in the App Store. It just would be too bad for them to admit that there's that popular app. And so they kind of had to bite the bullet and be like, fine, we will also allow it. So that way you can't just win, like, get all the benefit of AltStore and Delta. So it was a strategically smart move from them, and I was very impressed with it.
It feels like we're sort of talking about like strategy or like risk or something. Like there's way more going on. Kind of like
it was very like it was very much like that. Like, we were stuck in Europe trying to come home, and like we find this out like on a Friday night as we're about to like just be relaxing, and we're like, oh my gosh. And so we had to figure out, because for us then our strategy was, what do we do? Like, do we keep Delta exclusive to AltStore, or do we like also release it in the App Store? And we had to think through like the pros and cons of everything, because we were like, obviously trying to get Delta out there, but we're also trying to launch AltStore as this whole official App Store now, which is allowed in Europe, and our premier app was Delta. And so we were like, so that's why I was very impressed with Apple's play. I think it worked out for us, because now Delta is in the App Store worldwide, except for Europe, where it's in AltStore, and that's for reasons to do with fees and whatever. It's complicated, but it does mean that we can still have AltStore, and we can be growing that, while also people now outside of Europe can install Delta. So
why did Apple not give you a heads up about it? Why did Apple go, look guys, in 2 weeks time, you can have your emulator on the App Store?
Because why would they? That's the thing. It's like and we also know we were catching them very much off guard. Like, just basically, we went out there to work with them to launch our store. We learned very quickly that they were not prepared for how prepared we were to launch. Like, we came to like their lab in like Cork in like February, and we were like, we're ready to launch. Our app is finished. And they were just like not expecting that. And so they were just like reacting to us being so prepared the whole time. And so they were making these decisions up like on the fly. And
interesting.
It's very interesting.
I wonder if, do you think Apple's ever going to go back on the emulation kind of law that they have in their App Store? Do you think they'll go, shit, like Nintendo are being really strict with all their Switch stuff. It might dabble down into GameCube soon and all of that, because they're pushing them all onto Switch Online, rumored. So I just wonder if, I don't know, Nintendo are going to go knocking on Apple and go, look, you need to make a few changes here.
But like Delta's been downloaded by so many people as well. Like, it was, I mean, I had a look on the App Store here, and it was like top for weeks and weeks and weeks. And then everyone I speak to in different countries as well, like everyone's got it on their phone. So if they do go back now, then like
people are going to be pissed.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be worse for them if they do, because everyone loves what you guys have made and uses it on a daily basis.
And it would also be just like, again, too big a win for AltStore if they did that, because we would be like, okay, we still have Delta, and this Apple just could not put, like, that would just look so bad for them, as like everyone would be like, okay, so the App Store is bad, there are better options outside. So it's kind of their force to keep it.
Like, not updating their phone again just for Delta. I remember those old days when you like, people were like, don't fucking update your phone because it'll get rid of your apps.
You're gonna lose Flappy Bird and stuff.
Exactly. So yeah, we kind of forced Apple's hand, is just what happened. And I mean, so it's so much better. Now there's so many other emulators in the App Store. But yeah, Apple was not going to do this if we didn't literally launch our own freaking App Store with Delta. Yeah.
Because you guys were we covered when we got the news that emulators were coming to the iPhone.
Yeah.
We were well excited.
That was a crazy couple of weeks.
It was mad. Wasn't it? We were just writing about stuff continually, like so many emulators dropping. But yours was the first. Yours was the one that Delta was the one that seemed, as you were saying, to kind of like push things along and get things going. And it's one that I know, like I said before, like we use, a lot of our friends use, it just seems to be everywhere.
Yeah.
Like again, like, so you've gone from, like, you've gone from saying like what it's like waking up and seeing 200 people using GBA for iOS. In your mind now, like, this must be an incredible, you must feel incredibly proud of it, like a massive achievement. To have kind of like the AltStore and Delta coming out in like a double threat plan where you kind of win every time, and then knowing that everyone's loving Delta as well. Like, you've come a long way, obviously, from shoot around to this.
Yeah, oh, for sure. No, yeah, it feels phenomenal. Like, it truly feels like, again, surreal, just because it's the culmination of like so much. Like, I've been working on AltStore now for 5 years with the end goal of someday doing something like this. Been working on Delta for 10 years. And so, yeah, just like it's been so rewarding that it paid off. Like, that people are loving it and enjoying it, because it's like, I could have been working on this for 10 years and then it didn't go anywhere. And so, I don't know, it's been very amazing. Like, this year has been incredible. It's like seeing everyone enjoying it. I remember, like, right after I launched, my Threads feed was just everyone like posting screenshots of like Delta and like playing Delta, and that was like the most amazing thing. I was like, wow, all these people literally just like enjoying their, like, reliving their childhood and having a great time. It's just like all I want to do. Like, it's just I think the best thing you can do as a creator is give people like that joy. And no, it's been amazing. I'm so like just incredibly grateful for how much people are loving this.
You've done a great job. We use ours almost weekly. We've even got our own skin now. We had Sean Fletcher on the pod, worked with him a bit.
Oh yeah, I did see. Yes, yeah. Sean,
brilliant,
he's killing it. He's incredible. I'm like, wow, and it's so awesome to see that, like, to see a rise of like a community of like people making skins. Like, that's so amazing to me. I'm like, hell yeah, and the people also supporting him, like buying his stuff and skins. Like, I think it's really great, like, to see all this happening.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my questions is, like, how do you monetize an emulator? Like, you've obviously need to get paid for your work.
Delicately.
How do people support you? And Apple and Nintendo obviously don't want you to make a single penny off this.
Yeah.
So I guess how can people support your work?
I think we've done a good job of figuring that out. Or we do everything through Patreon, and Patreon is just fully to support development of all of our apps. It's not for Delta, it's not for AltStore. It's like, it's a personal Patreon for me and Shane, and we're just like, hey, if you like what we're doing, donate a few bucks a month, and in exchange for that, we will give people like pre-release versions of like Delta and our apps. And so that's like been the main thing. So people who want to try new features like multiplayer that's coming very soon, that'll be like in Patreon first in beta, and so people can try that out, beta test it, let us know. And that's worked pretty well, because it's really like a balance. Like, charging for emulators is kind of like a very just messy issue. People have a lot of opinions about it, whether you agree or not. And it's like, we didn't want to wade into that, but we also like need to support ourselves somewhere. But so I really like that we can give away Delta, like the full version of Delta, for free, and everyone gets it. And then if people just want certain features early, then they can donate to us. And I think that's a pretty good balance. Like, that we're not having a paywall. We're not trying, like, features are never going to be held forever behind something. So they're just until they're done and polished up. And it's worked out pretty well. So, and yeah, everything's Patreon. Our entire income is just our Patreon account.
That's awesome. That's a good way of doing it. Kind of makes you kind of more reliable, resilient to changes and stuff. And talking about changes, I heard you got in a bit of a pickle with Adobe.
Oh, like, that's just the most hilarious.
Lightly, really, isn't it?
What happened there? Talk me through the day you got that email.
Yeah, this is like, again, like shortly after our launch, so we're still like in the backlog, like trying to get on top of everything, support, fixing like just everything, and we're just so busy. And then I just would get an email in our inbox, and it's just like something from Adobe. I'm like, hi, I'm a lawyer from Adobe representing like whatever. We've noticed that your app icon is very similar to ours, and then like post like a screenshot of our icon next to like their Adobe icon, like right, and I'm like, they are very similar. I'm like, yeah. Like,
it's such a vague shape. Like, how do you like trademark a fucking triangle?
I know. It was like, it's frustrating, but we were like, there's no winning this battle. Like, we see it. Like, they show, like, when the lawyer send you two images and they're pretty identical, I'm like,
you can't argue, can you? Just be like,
exactly.
Yeah. As soon as the words lawyer and identical are in there, you're like, it's easy just to kind of say, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. So we were just like, desperate to figure like what to do. And so that's why so our friend Caroline Moore, she does all the design for Delta and everything. She does all the skins, all the icon stuff. And so we called her up and we're like, we need a new icon very fast just to get Adobe like off of our like asses right now. And then so she was like trying to be really creative and come up with like a new like icon just very quickly. And then we're like, no. It should be stupid. Like it should look really stupid. It should be like, people should be clear that we are annoyed that we're having to change this icon and we're not going to devote it. And we just want them off our backs. And so we like settle it. And then we're like, she eventually just like chops the top off. And we're like, nailed it. Perfect. That is exactly what we need. Because we wanted to like do a new icon, but we're like, we need time to like design an actual new one. But we were like, Adobe's on our back now. And so we're like,
did they give you a time frame?
As soon as possible. And we're like,
which means now.
Yeah. We're like, it's just like not a battle worth fighting either. So we're like, whatever. Let's just change the icon, get them off our backs. And we thought that honestly would be fine. And then they were not fully happy with the temporary icon. So they gave us a little more time and we're like, fine. But so then we finally got the new icon
chopping
out.
more and more off the top.
I know, like, how much do we need to chop?
Just a line with Adobe written in it really small at the very bottom.
Exactly. But I do think it's pretty funny. I'm like, you have all the companies to reach out to us. I was like, Adobe was not who I predicted. Like,
I mean,
okay.
I guess when you were sort of like, trying to get Pokemon Emerald on your phone back when you were at high school, you didn't expect Adobe to be kind of knocking on your door, being like, "Excuse me, could you not do this?"
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah, the dominoes, like from there, like I'm like, oh, okay, wow, wild.
Listen, I wanna know, getting onto Delta again. Like, I want to know, like, I don't have a background in developing. We write, we make videos, so this is like your field. Is it more difficult to get like to develop for the NES working on this thing than it is to get the DS running on this thing and the GBA on this thing? Like, when you were working through, I guess, how did you pick the consoles that are on Delta? Why did you pick them? And are some easy to work on more than others? Have some proved like a challenge for you to get working? Was getting dual screen on there way difficult? Was that a bit more of a head scratcher for you?
So I think most of the consoles are honestly kind of the same. All the 2D, like NES, SNES, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, all of those are virtually the same difficulty, I think, to implement Delta. It was a very easy, like, that's very straightforward. You render like a bitmap, and you display that bitmap, and then there's nothing like, they all the same buttons, with slightly more or less, but nothing too advanced. But so the two that did, like, take more effort were N64 and DS. So those were the ones that required a little bit more. N64, for multiple reasons. It's the only one that's like rendered with OpenGL right now on the phone, which is being deprecated by Apple and has been for a few years. So it's just like not the most supported thing in the world. So it's kind of annoying to have to wrestle with that. And so I had to spend some time just like getting that just working in general. But besides that, and then figuring out like the analog stick, building that design. But besides that was the same. DS, yes, was the one that, if I wanted to do a base level job, would have been hard, but I really wanted to like make it a really good DS emulator because the DS like has so many features. And so definitely took a lot more to get up beyond the basics. Like I had to hook up the microphone, and that took like a couple of weeks of like me just fine tuning the audio input from the iPhone microphone, sending it through filters, figuring out how it would go to the game best, or getting the accelerometer in Game Boy Advance. That's another exception, but that was fun to get that working for like WarioWare Twisted. So
nice.
So the base level emulation is not too bad, but whenever I'm adding like these extra features on top, that I wouldn't say it's hard, but it's like a different challenge, and it's kind of fun to see what can I do with that, and that's kind of what I like the most.
I guess that's why, like, I mean, if I have RetroArch and Delta next to each other, like if I'm mapping a controller into Delta, it's super easy. If I'm using the N64 controls on Delta, it's super easy. Like I have way less messing around to do. And I guess that's the difference. That's why I think so many people are enjoying using Delta rather than a lot of the other emulators that have come out for iPhone, because of these extra touches that you put in, and because of thinking about the end user and making it as easy and nice and nostalgic for them as possible. So like it pays off. Everything you do is paying off and working. Yeah.
I'm glad that you said it, because I think that's exactly it. And it's a thing that's interesting coming into the emulation space, because a lot of emulation enthusiasts are wanting like very, very technical features, very low level things, and very like stuff to improve that. But I really was like, not I didn't want to support that, but I like my focus would be to the people that really have not done this before, that really have, because they've been turned off by like the high barrier for entry, like myself included. Like I built Delta for me. I don't like using RetroArch, nothing against it, just I like a nice UI. Like that kind of experience to me honestly matters more than a lot of the more advanced emulation things. Not that those aren't important, but that's like where I started from. I was like, I really think we need to get, especially like on iPhone. I was like, if I'm building an iPhone emulator, I feel like this is how it would be built. Like people on iPhone are generally just wanting like to just work. Like they want to put in a ROM and it runs. And so that, yes, was a very much a strong focus on that. But it does lead to certain debates of like what emulator is like better. And then it's kind of funny to see like people just like talk past each other. Like people will be like, oh, RetroArch's best because it has these features. And then people will be like, oh, I like Delta because of the UI. And then it's just, people just care about certain things and you can't appease everyone. And so that's why it's so good RetroArch is on the platform. Like, cause that, I mean, it is the master class. Like it is, if you're an emulation enthusiast, it's everything you need. And so I'm really glad it's there. But I kind of wanted to address the people that RetroArch wasn't addressing, which I felt like was a big demographic. And I would argue that it is the bigger demographic of the casual retro gamers than the people who are actually installing RetroArch. It's just been too hard to do it until now.
My old man wanted to get into just playing old Zelda games on his phone. And this was years ago. I introduced him to RetroArch. And he installed it, and he instantly goes, fuck that, and then just uninstalled it. And now I've told him about Delta, and he's starting to play around with that, and it is much easier. My dad's like 62, so...
Oh, well, that's awesome. I'm so glad. Yeah, he's enjoying
our dads are also... Brandon's dad's heavily Sicilian, and mine is heavily Italian. So we're talking with two people who... You know, they've kind of got the mindset of if it doesn't work in 18 seconds, it's going in the bin. You know,
trust me, the first version with DS files for Delta, like when you had to get the DS files, oh my gosh, all the support requests of just having to figure that one out. And so, updating to Melon DS 095 that doesn't require BIOS files, that's been great. Like again, just that one little extra step, and people were like, "Oh my god, DS is so hard." I was like, I get it. It's just you gotta find these files online. I'm so sorry. And so, but it's and that, or I think there's another thing that's interesting that running like making an app for like the more casual players that is like we have like so many casual players now that are new to this that they don't understand like the ins and outs of emulation. And so when we had like to upgrade Melon DS Core in Delta from like an older version to latest version, that was a very, very stressful thing. Because all like the emulation enthusiasts were like, why haven't you done this already? You're so far behind. The core is completely outdated. But we were like, everyone's using this to play Pokemon, and they're using save states. They are not saving. If we update the core, all the save states are broken. They will they will lose all of their progress. And it's like, and it's hard to explain to people who know what they're talking about that so many people have no idea how this works. And so we had to do a lot to deal with that transition. Like the transition itself on a technical level was easy. I updated the code, but then we had to like have we built a separate app, Delta Legacy, that had the old core in place, and we had to have a whole like flow for people to export save states from Delta after it updated, so they could import these save states into Delta Legacy, just so they could load it up, and just so they could then export a save file they could put back into Delta. And it's like so much effort, but we had to because like. We just couldn't because like automatic updates. People would literally just like wake up one day and they'd open Delta and then all the progress would be gone. And we're just like, that just is impossible. And so we did all this. We still got so many emails of like people like distraught about like how they lost all their Pokemon. And like so many people like, and they're like, how could you do this? Like you've ruined my time. And it's just like, oh, so that was hard. We did slowly get through it, but it's just like one of those things that you don't think about if you're like building like a project for fun that's like just out there in the world. But when you have like a lot like a big user base, these kind of decisions are really different. And that's the number one reason that the cores are not updated in Delta as frequently. It's because every single time it affects people. And so and we gotta, so I'm not against it. We need to update the cores for sure, but it's hard when every single time we get emails about how we ruined people's Pokemon, and it hurts because I'm like, I don't want to do that.
I guess you have to make the right moves for the majority, isn't it? And unfortunately, the smaller majority, the very passionate emulator enthusiasts are the most vocal. So at times you need to almost filter it and be like, I can't be dealing with that right now. I need to focus on like the core audience, which is
and so
usually
it's
the ones
a balance.
that don't understand.
Yeah, and it's because it's just me. So it's like I am just prioritizing. And again, I'm not opposed to any feature whatsoever. Like I know there are like a lot of advanced features that I want to get to and add myself. Like in the next version we're working on has a lot of improvements from N64. Like stuff like people want like custom resolutions or like texture packs, like the things people have been wanting to be able to use. Like sure, we'll add that in, but we just got to add them in slowly without like complicating it for everyone else.
You don't want to scare too many people and stuff as well. Like I was just been thinking while you've been talking, you are appealing to all those people who didn't want to jailbreak their phones back in the day, who just want, you know, like who waited and just want the simple route. People want stuff to work, like you said, there and then.
Yeah.
To turn on and go. So if you start putting loads of things in now, you're just going to scare those people off who are just sort of getting used to, like, you know, Brandon's dad, my dad, if I could ever convince him to understand what a telephone is, you know, like we could get him on gaming and so yeah, I completely agree with that, and I also like I get it. The day that I accidentally deleted my Banjo-Kazooie file on my N64, I mean this must have been 25 plus years ago, and I still think about it as the worst thing that's happened to me in my life thus far. And Brandon knows about a lot of crap happened in my life, so if Banjo-Kazooie's still up there, then
I lost my Pokemon XD save file back in the day, and it was after I transferred like all my Pokemon to it, so I could battle in 3D. Then my memory card corrupted. I cried so hard, and that it's like that has stuck in my brain. I was like, that can just happen. You can lose all your Pokemon. And of course, I was so attached to them. I was like, So like those memories are like I still remember. So I'm like, whenever people email me saying that they've lost Pokemon, I'm like, I'm so sorry. I know, like it's irrational, but I get it. I understand.
I'm just sitting here just thinking I was this close to killing Gruntilda, and now like I've got to start from the beginning of Spiral Mountain, and I'm getting flashbacks before my eyes, man. I went off to a different place. Then
you want to take some time, Seb?
I might need to go and get a cup of tea and come back. Can we break for like 10 minutes and just sort of get
No, exactly. It's like it matters. Like save files, like kind of thing is like So I like it. I think it's important that I want to take it seriously. So I really, really try hard to not lose it. It's like there's syncing in Delta. It's like it's a backup system. Like just if you use Delta Sync, all your save files are backed up. And it's just like an extra way of making sure your stuff's not lost.
Nice. Let's talk about the future of Delta. Is there anything that you're kind of working on? Is there been loads of requests for like a certain console that you just want to implement or that might be coming? Anything that you can tease us with?
We get requests for all consoles. Every console you can imagine, people want is the next one. So we're like
Game Gear.
Out. So I mean,
I was counting down the seconds till Brandon went Game Gear. We had 4 seconds.
I was like, so we have Genesis right now, and we need to finish that one up. And I do feel bad. That's not being held up for any reason, but the fact that I haven't gotten around to making it final. Like there's still bugs in it, so I need to get that out there. But beyond that, the next probably the one I want to do is 3DS. I think would be the most interesting and in line kind of with most of like Delta systems existing. Also because I want to like build a version for the Vision Pro at some point. And I was like, what a good console to start with. If I had a 3DS and Vision Pro, I'd be like, so that's kind of like what I want to do next. But we'll get to that soon. Of course, I want GameCube and Wii emulation at some point. We are working with Europe, like the European Commission, basically, to get them to force Apple to allow JIT. And we are hopeful that this can happen. We literally had like a meeting with them last week and like gave arguments about why JIT should be allowed for certain classes of apps like emulators. So we're hopeful that we'll see GameCube and Wii emulation at some point. But then besides that, the feature we're working on right now that we're set for is online multiplayer for DS games. And that's like
when's that coming, do you think?
The first beta should be available. When's this podcast come out?
This would be 3 weeks time.
Cool. So it should be the first beta should be out by then. So
okay,
and I'll send y'all a version if you want to play around with it for sure. But we're very excited, to get that out. Also because it's been the #1 requested feature by far ever since we launched. It's been like, when can I trade Pokemon? When can I battle? Basically those two things. And then everyone like it's online, but it's basically about Pokemon and trading and battling. And then
that must be a
Mario
mighty
Kart.
task to make that reality. To be able to trade Pokemon on a Nintendo DS emulator via 4G. Like how niche is that?
It was. When I got it working,
internet,
the first time, it was like just so it felt magical. Like it just felt so cool. And I gotta say, most of the work is because they're third parties running like these third party servers, like because Nintendo shut down their servers. So now there's like Alt WFC and other ones like that, WeMFI, and they're just running their whole custom servers, and that's how this whole thing works. I just have to connect to their servers, and then things just kind of work magically. But all the things you expect work. Like I did a Pokemon trade the other day, tested out. Voice chatting works. You can just do all that. I'm like,
that's awesome.
I'm like, wow, this is. I didn't expect voice chat to work. I was like in my head, like, there's no way. And I was like, wow, this is like such a throwback. Having a Pokemon trade or like Pokemon battling, be able to talk to each other over it. So very excited to get that out.
It's wild to just sort of like get a text from your partner or something, and then like get your online shopping, and like, oh yeah, I'm just on the bus. I'll just trade some Pokemon on the same thing that I'm also looking at the weather for. Like this is it's mad, and it's so cool because do you find that a lot of people like? I mean, you've mentioned it quite a lot, so I'm going to guess it's yes. And most of these requests Pokemon based. Is everyone just like
100%? Yeah,
just everyone just wants to. Isn't it awesome that like? Such an iconic 90s series is just playing such a massive precedent today, like on devices like we're using iPhone 15 and 16 and stuff. It's just wild, isn't it?
No, yeah, it's amazing. I mean, Pokemon's the reason I did this in the first place. Playing Pokemon Emerald was the motivation. So it's amazing that like everyone else also just really loves Pokemon, and that's like the main driver. It's like whenever I meet someone who plays Delta, it's like I ask them what they're playing, and most of the time it's just Pokemon. Which is awesome.
Lastly, I want to pick your brains from what you said. The Nintendo 3DS emulator for the Vision Pro. That sounds like a big task, but an awesome task. Talk to me about your vision. Funnily enough, for that, that's
why it gets paid the big bucks.
Yeah. How do you see this working? Is it as simple as just a screen and kind of emulating what Delta's done?
So in a perfect world, yeah. I would want to make it really cool. So I've imagined like you could split up maybe the screens. So you could have like a giant top screen there, and then maybe you could have like the touch screen in your hand, or like could follow you around or something like that, just to make it more dynamic like that. But then yes, the big screen would be all 3D. And I was like, what if you just have a giant 3D screen and like the touch screen on the side wherever your hand is, and then you could just use your other hand to touch it. And I don't know, I thought it'd be kind of fun. But besides that, open like to anything really.
Would that lead you to working on like Virtual Boy stuff as well, maybe, and getting that added to the collection?
Virtual Boys, yeah. I also very much want to do Virtual Boy.
It'd be nice to have a Virtual Boy thing that didn't make you want to sort of poke your own eyes out like the original, like the Migraine Master. Like, it'd be great to get something that didn't want to make your head explode. So that would be really cool.
No, yeah, I would love to add that. I would love to add that for sure. That will probably be when I have more time for the nicher things.
Yeah, sure.
People are requesting the big features, and so every time we focus on something that's not a big feature, we get people asking, why'd you do this instead of blank? And it's like, because we're trying, like, sometimes we gotta do stuff for fun also for me. So I'm like, this is just a fun feature I want to put in. And so it's like, we're working on something interesting that'll only be in Europe, unfortunately, but because of AltStore rules, we want to be able to use the camera control to like quickly access the pause menu options in Delta. So you can like open the camera control on the new iPhone 16, switch to fast forward, and like swipe up and down to fast forward, or like access save states, or even change filters, which is going to come soon. And I'm like, this is really fun. Like, I think it's way better than using it for the camera apps. Cause like, it's just like a quick access to a lot of common features, but AltStore doesn't allow that. So it'll only be in AltStore. But just like one interesting thing.
I did an article about just using the action button on the iPhone 15 to just open Delta up straight away. Because I was just like, that turns your phone, it makes it feel way more like a retro gaming console then, because you can just press the little orange button on the side of my phone and then Delta pops up.
Yeah,
it's wild that I can now use my phone to, play 40 Winks on the TV, air playing from my phone, using my Pro Controller from my Switch. It's just like, this one program turns your entire phone into a retro gaming extravaganza, and it's just, I still think, I know like we live in this world where this stuff happens, but it still excites me every day. Like, I'm 34 and this shit still gets me excited. I love it.
No, I mean, it's wicked. It is exciting. It's just cool. It's just fun. Like, like me and Shane say, it's like, I don't know, tech's been really boring for like a while, and it's just like cool to have like fun things happen again. That's like, it's not important, but like, in the grand scheme of things, does emulation on iPhones really matter as much as certain things? No. But is it really freaking cool? And does everyone love it? Yes. And I think we've lost sight of that in the past few years. I mean, everything's just matured so much that we're not making fun stuff. We're just making AI or crypto or whatever the hot new thing in tech is. And so, yeah, I think it's fun to focus on the basics.
Agreed. Well, I think we'll round off the podcast there. We were going to go into your retro gaming history, but I think me and Seb will probably want to get you back on maybe next year sometime when you've got a bit more free time, when there's other projects coming out.
Absolutely,
I mean, it's basically going to be Pokemon Emerald, Pokemon Emerald, Pokemon Emerald. So
exactly.
Yeah. And when Game Gear comes to Delta, well, we'll get you
right on it just so that we can do this again. Cool. Game Gear's in. Let's do it.
He's going to have to explain to all his patrons why the 3DS wasn't there because some bloke from England kept banging on about the Game Gear. I'm really
sorry, folks. I know everyone wants 3DS. Apparently, Game Gear is priority now. Everyone, we were like,
fucking love it. I love it. Anyway, Riley, thank you for coming on. Where can people follow you, and most importantly, where can people support you?
Excellent. Yeah, they can follow me on Threads at Riley Testut. I'm pretty active there now, or on Mastodon for the nerds at Riley Testut at Mastodon.social. And then you can find my Patreon, or patreon.com/Riley Testut. Oh, nope, /Riley Shane. We changed it since Shane joined. And
nice.
So support us there, be a part of this, join our, play around with betas, just support us doing cool things.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on, Riley. It's appreciated.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.